Volume 7 of DanMachi, the side story, really delves a lot more into sort of the second way in and out of the dungeon, and them actually, I would say, discovering where it is, and in a sense, trying to uncover more of this sort of multi-layer puzzle that is going on. And of course, in the main story that I've read so far, most of that is uncovered, but seeing the other perspective of how the Loki familiars are trying to uncover everything really is quite, I would say, fascinating, without overusing that word, because they're trying to find something that they believed was outside of the city, and then they've come to the conclusion that obviously it is hiding somewhere in the city, in this massive maze that is, of course, Daedalus Street. It is a massive ordeal of them trying to find it. It is very difficult. And I'd love to see in a more anime-based form of just how puzzling and crazy this place is, because one of the things that I've always found weird is the fact that some of the really powerful adventurers can just jump from rooftop to rooftop, which is an easy way to go through the city itself, particularly that district. But they mention in the light novels that if you're on the ground level, you can get lost and basically be stuck there forever if you aren't paying attention to where you're going. And people have left sort of almost like breadcrumb trails, in a sense of leaving markings of where to follow. And that's how they actually go about finding this other entrance slash exit, is by using the opposite way of getting out, and then they end up uncovering more of the mysteries going on, which leads them into trying to go in there, and then them realizing the amount of time and investment and manpower and money that is gone into building this special passageway. And I've always been fascinated if they will ever use this passageway in a more productive manner rather than the evil organizations using it. You know, if the actual heroes themselves or adventurers or the governmenting systems in the city itself end up taking it over, are they going to use it in a way to try and help the actual adventurers, or use it as an escape method or an emergency method? I am very curious of where that will go, and I've mentioned that in previous video. But Loki and the familiars themselves are trying to uncover who's running this and how they are able to invest so much money and time into it. And I don't think it's necessarily just the manpower that's the main thing, it's the money. The amount of resources and income that would be needed to make this is astronomical, and there really is only one god slash goddess that is able to feed that amount of money, and that is Ishtar. And I've mentioned in some of my other videos about Ishtar, but I didn't know just how much of an influence she had in certain parts of the story, and reading volume 7 really shows just how deep and intertwined she is in with a lot of the corrupted organizations. And it really actually just shows actually quite how evil she is. I mean, she knows about the people that are running this sort of second entrance slash exit and the dark entities that are also aligned with them, and she doesn't care. All because she wants to get vengeance on Freya. And it really just shows how far they're willing to fall, haha, hint hint nudge nudge, on a previous volume in season 2, how far she's willing to fall just to get her revenge on Freya, which ends up leading her to fall even harder when she gets backhanded. But I think that's what I really found quite fascinating about her, is yes, I figured she would go really far, but I didn't think she would be handing massive lump sums of money to a evil organization that could end up hurting the city itself and other adventurers. It just shows how little she cares, which I guess, in a sense, left to her revenge. And I mean, the end of the volume does show the Freya slash Ishtar event, and I did always wonder in that particular volume itself for the main story why Loki and the familiars weren't really kind of there to watch or at least interfere in some way, shape or form, even if it was just being bystanders or trying to help those in danger. I always wondered why they weren't there, and then it explains it that they were busy doing their own thing, and then as soon as that massive event, which is volume 7, ends, they walk straight into this situation where they're like, wow, what's going on over in the Pleasure District? And they see that Freya's gone on all outright war and hasn't allowed Ishtar to try and retaliate back. And because of Loki's interference with the second entrance slash exit, that also really hurt Ishtar's ability to try and get at Freya, because Ishtar was trying to use more than just one way to get her. She wasn't just trying to ambush her, she wasn't just going to debuff Otter himself, it wasn't even just the actual item itself that they were going to use to boost everyone up. There were other entities as well, of course the Amazon girls from the distant island that I mentioned in the previous volume, as well as the dark entities that are running this dungeon entrance slash exit. there are so many little things that Ishtar was trying to put in place to make sure that she had a slam dunk when going after Freya. And I know that isn't the main focus of this volume, but it just really showed to me just how intertwined some of these bits and pieces of the story are, but without actually having to focus on Belle. See, Belle isn't the focus, and I find that even more fascinating because of how intertwined it is to what's going on with Belle, but it doesn't even really reference Belle, it just references everything that's going on around Belle. And I just thought that was really cool. But I think the real focus of this volume is Eyes, the Loki familiars, trying to uncover the mysteries that are going on in this multi-layered dungeon entrance / exit, and the fact that they get trapped in there and they've got all these monsters, and of course, as I like to call her, Angry Redhead, which is Revis, that is mentioned in the first season of the anime, that is a big enemy of Eyes herself, and obviously knows a bit about Eyes, not that much, but does a little bit. There is that big confrontation going on between them, and of course my lovely little prom boy, he ends up running into some major issues as well, and runs into some of the past things that have gone on in his life, and he ends up getting badly hurt and cursed, and he's kind of just basically baggage. He's just there, lying there, paralyzed and cursed, and they need to defeat the person that put the curse on him to be able to remove it. And the stakes really do get quite dangerous, and Eyes herself has to push her limits and use her abilities more creatively so that she is able to help her other familiars. So she ends up using her wind magic to basically try and direct her other familiars to her, because this dungeon / exit is really weird how to word it, because there's no real definition of what it is. It's just an entrance / exit that goes deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper into the dungeon itself. But it's almost like a maze in a sense, the way they describe it. There are many different, different directions that they can go. They could go left, they could go right, and then as they're going, there could be a dead end, or there could be another way to go left or right. And there are all these statues that are used as almost like eyes of watching who's going through it, and then they're able to close and open doors to allow monsters in and out, or people as well, and trap them into certain sections. And that's exactly what they do. It's like a maze, and they trap people in certain parts of this sort of underground tunnel system, and that's how they try and break everyone apart, separate them so they can try and gang up on them and defeat them all. And there are definitely a lot of stakes at large here. There is actually a death in this volume, and I don't really want to say who, because I want people to be able to read it and enjoy it for themselves. But the death itself, I feel like there's positives and negatives to this. The positive is that it shows that the stakes are high, and it shows that people can die for obvious reasons of the evil entities out there are trying to do harm. The downside about it, it was a very minor character, and it was a character that I knew about from the anime and the light novel, of course, because it's mentioned, but it was a character that just was so minor, you could forget about them in another volume and be like, whatever. And I do hope there is some repercussions going on in the next volumes that kind of weigh on people, and I do know the Prom himself feels very guilty and felt sort of down in himself and felt like he failed because there was a death, and I think in part shook everyone up in the familiar. And of course Loki herself was quite saddened, even though she kind of threw a bit of a jab of humor in there about, trying to get some fun time out of her, but it really showed that everyone cared about her. But at the same time, as much as I understand that does show the stakes are there, it was a very minor character. And in that part, I kind of thought to myself, well, who would be a good choice to actually have die in a really high stakes situation? And then to me, I was kind of like, I don't want to lose anyone in that story, because I generally like everyone in there. As much as Bet in this volume was super annoying, like he is in every volume, I love his character. As much as he's annoying, I love the character itself because it adds the necessary chemistry to the group as a whole. Sometimes you need a character that everyone hates, kind of bring everything together, and sometimes you need a character that says what's needed, not what's wanted, and kind of also do the same in the actions as well. And as much as he's a character that can be very easy to antagonize, to agitate, and he's very quick to bark at people, kind of a fun joke there that just came up on the spot, he is that character that is kind of needed and a necessity, and he's also adds a lot of chemistry to the overall volumes themselves. As much as I just kind of wish he'd lighten up a little bit. And I do wonder, as the volumes go on, does he kind of build a bit more character building in that he kind of relaxes a little bit, grows up a little bit more? I am quite intrigued by that, and I have seen some art that kind of shows that he does become a bit more of a focus in the next volume. I will just have to wait and see. But overall, this was a volume that I did really enjoy quite thoroughly, even though it mainly focuses on the entrance / exit sort of story arc itself. I do like what it sort of uncovers a lot of the past for Eyes, the past for the Prom, more also on the people that are working on it, the evils themselves, because the evils play a big part in the past itself, and there are many characters, not just in the side story, but also in the main story with Belle, that have had confrontations and past travesties with these evils, and it just shows that they're still hanging around. None of them were really defeated on a big scale. They were just kind of, there were some wins and losses from both sides, and I'm intrigued to see just what their plans are and how far they're willing to go. It was definitely an interesting volume. It really added a lot of character development, not just for the familiars themselves, for Loki, but also for the enemies as a whole as well, and seeing what their plans are and how far they're willing to go to get their overall objective achieved. But overall, I'd love to know your thoughts in the comment section down below. What were your favorite parts of this volume? Are you reading the light novels? Just your overall thoughts and opinions are definitely welcome in the comment section down below. But if you like this video, hit the like button, subscribe for more anime content, and I'll see you, beautiful nerds, in the next video.